For the longest time, launching a rocket was a one-and-done deal. You'd throw away this incredibly complex machine after just one use. But that is all changing thanks to the reusability revolution. The real question, though, is how in the world do you land a 70-meter-tall booster that's falling out of the sky? Well, let's get into it.
I mean, look at this. This incredible sight has become, well, almost routine, which is just wild to think about. You've got two boosters after they've just hurled a payload into orbit, coming back down to Earth for this perfectly synchronized landing, just standing on these pillars of fire. It's a method pioneered by folks like SpaceX and Blue Origin, and it has absolutely changed the game. It proved to everyone that rockets do not have to be disposable.
So, this is an amazing solution, no doubt about it. But is it the only way? Or even the best way? What if instead of landing like a rocket, a booster could land more like a plane? That right there is the big question we're digging into today, and we'll be looking at some fascinating research from the German Aerospace Center to figure it out.
All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with why reusability is such a big deal, the revolution itself. Then we'll get into the two main ways to land a rocket. After that, we'll see how that single choice affects pretty much everything: the design, performance, that crazy fiery reentry, and of course the cost. And at the end, we'll try to figure out what's the best method. So first up, why does any of this matter? Well, it really boils down to one word: money. Think about it. An expendable rocket is one of the most complex machines humans have ever built, and just throwing it away after one flight, that's astronomically expensive. Reusability is the absolute key to slashing the cost of getting to space and opening it up like never before. Okay, so if you're going to reuse a rocket, how do you actually do it? Well, it turns out there are really two main schools of thought on this. Two completely different engineering philosophies for getting that first stage back to Earth in one piece. And this image just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got the method we're all pretty familiar with now, using raw engine power to land. But over on the right, you see something totally different. A booster with wings, designed to literally glide back home. It's basically a showdown between pure power and aerodynamic grace. So that first method is called VTVL, which stands for vertical takeoff, vertical landing. The way it works is, after the first stage separates, it literally flips itself around, fires up its engines again to hit the brakes, and then uses that retropropulsion to make a soft, controlled landing, standing perfectly upright, just like we've seen. Now, the challenger to that is VTHL, vertical takeoff, horizontal landing. And this approach is, well, completely different. Instead of firing up its engines to slow down, it uses wings and control surfaces to create lift and drag. It glides through the atmosphere and lands on a runway, just like an airplane. Yeah, kind of like the space shuttle, but for a rocket booster. But there's a catch with the VTVL method. See, for really high-energy missions, the booster just doesn't have enough gas to make it all the way back to the launch site. So instead, it has to do what's called a downrange landing, or DRL, on one of those robotic drone ships out at sea. And as you can imagine, that requires a whole naval operation. You've got the drone ship, tugboats, support vessels, all just to bring that one booster home. The VTHL folks? Oh, they have their own wild recovery idea. It's called in-air capturing. And yeah, it's as crazy as it sounds. The plan is for the winged booster to glide downrange, where a huge, specially modified plane, we're talking something like a 747, would literally catch it in midair and then just tow it back to the launch site. No ships, no ocean, just this incredible aerial ballet. All right, so you've picked your landing style, engines or wings. But how does that one choice affect the actual rocket? Well, it turns out it changes everything. We're talking the rocket's size, its shape, even the kind of fuel it uses. Okay, take a look at this comparison of a few different concepts. A couple of things should jump right out at you. First, the winged VTHL rockets over there on the left, they're generally smaller than the VTVL rockets that land with their engines. Second, check out the difference the fuel makes. The red rockets, the ones using liquid hydrogen, are way smaller than the methane ones. So, what's going on there? Well, it all comes down to this really counterintuitive bit of physics. Hydrogen fuel is super light, not dense at all, which means you need these massive, bulky tanks to hold it. Now, you'd think that would make for a bigger rocket overall, right? Wrong. It actually creates what's called a lower ballistic coefficient. The best way to think about it is like a badminton shuttlecock versus a golf ball. The shuttlecock is big and poofy, but light, so it slows down really fast in the air. That bulky hydrogen rocket does the exact same thing during re-entry. It brakes naturally, which means it needs less heavy heat shielding and less fuel for landing. So really, this is the heart of it all. It's this fundamental trade-off. The VTVL rocket, the one that lands on its engines, basically carries its landing gear in the form of extra fuel. That's a propellant penalty. The VTHL rocket, on the other hand, carries its landing gear as actual hardware: wings, control surfaces, wheels. That's a dry mass penalty. It really is a choice between carrying more fuel or carrying more stuff. Okay, now for what is maybe the most dangerous part of the whole trip: that fiery plunge back through the atmosphere. And surviving this takes two totally different playbooks, depending on if you've got engines or wings at your disposal. This chart here maps out those two different reentry paths perfectly. Let's look at the solid lines first. That's our VTVL rocket. See how high up, around 60 to 70 kilometers, there's a sudden, sharp drop in speed? Boom. That's the reentry burn, hitting the brakes hard. Now look at the dashed lines for the VTHL, the winged rocket. It's a much more gradual, sweeping curve. It uses the atmosphere itself as one giant brake, slowing down gently over a much longer distance. Here's another way to think about it. The VTVL reentry is kind of like using a jetpack to slam on the brakes way up at 60 kilometers high. It's a short, intense slowdown to avoid the worst heat and pressure down low. The VTHL reentry, that's more like a wingsuit flight. You use a big surface area for a long, controlled, much gentler glide to bleed off all that speed. All right, we've talked physics, now let's follow the money. I mean, the whole point of reusability is to save cash, right? So which of these recovery methods is actually cheaper? Sending out a whole fleet of ships, or using a custom jumbo jet? And this cost breakdown is pretty fascinating. No surprise, landing back at the launch site, that's RTLS, is by far the cheapest option, around $230,000. But look at the two downrange options. This is the wild part. Even though one is a naval fleet and the other is a 747, their costs are surprisingly close. We're talking about $650,000 for the ships and $720,000 for the plane. Pretty similar, all things considered. And I think this number is really worth focusing on for a second. About $230,000. That's how cheap it gets when you can just cut out the entire downrange operation. No ships, no planes, just a concrete pad waiting for you. It's really the gold standard for cheap recovery. But, and it's a big but, it comes with a major performance hit, because the booster has to burn a ton of its own fuel to fly itself all the way back home. But here's maybe the most important takeaway when it comes to the money. As interesting as it is to compare these recovery costs, they're just a tiny slice of the total launch costs pie. The real thing that drives the price down isn't whether you use a ship or a plane, it's the flight rate. The more you fly these rockets, the more you spread out all your fixed costs, and the cheaper each individual launch gets. In this business, frequency is king. So after looking at the design, the physics, the money, where does that leave us? What is the best way to bring a rocket home? Well, the truth is, there really isn't one clear winner. VTVL has a huge advantage. It's proven technology, the aerodynamics are way simpler, and that return to launch site option is just so cheap. But it has to pay that heavy fuel penalty to land. VTHL, on the other hand, gets to skip that propellant penalty entirely, and it has a much gentler ride home. The trade-off? All that complex, heavy hardware, the wings, the gear, and of course, the totally unproven idea of catching it in mid-air. So it all comes back to that one fundamental choice, doesn't it? Engines or wings? Brute force or elegant glide? Both of these paths are just brilliant engineering solutions, and both come with their own huge challenges. Since there's no single best answer, maybe the real question isn't which one is better, but what combination of these ideas will finally unlock a future where going to space is routine and affordable for all of us.